biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. It is our second day of our Truth Team Week, and I wanted to spend some time, first of all, talking about the movie Unplanned, because of overcoming so many incredible barriers and circumstances that I think was really one of the great stories of the weekend. And then we're going to get into the whole question of Chick-fil-A, because now not only has Chick-fil-A been banned, if you will, from the San Antonio airport, but also from the Buffalo airport, or actually the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. We have Keisha Russell in by phone just to have some conversation. A little bit later, I want to bring up a piece that I thought would be of interest that is written by our good friend Jim Dennison, who'll be with us on Thursday, about a Washington Post author that decided to leave his faith. And the reasons he justifies it, I think, are worthy of some conversation, since we so often hear talk about this issue of apologetics. But as we go through this, let me especially have a call out to those of you that listen this hour. As we get into some of these topics, we really do need to hear from you. We recognize that this new hour that we have added from 12 to 1 primarily is a local program in Texas, although we do want to acknowledge some of our listeners in Minnesota as well. But it's been an opportunity to really focus on a lot of different issues, to have people like Jonathan Saenz on the program, to have Congressman Van Taylor, to also feature a number of local ministries. And we recognize that in this particular situation, and with the way in which we do the program, we don't really have a chance too often to hear from you. And I recognize that only a fraction of 1% of the listeners ever call into a program anyway. But when we come to this particular week, this is a chance for us to hear from you in a different way. You can go to the website, pointofview.net. And even a small gift would be your way of saying, hey, I'm listening to you. I appreciate what you're doing. And so I'd really love to hear from you. Of course, you can also call that call-in pledge line, 800-347-5151. But I recognize some of you might say, well, I don't even want to take the time to call. But, hey, I can go to pointofview.net, click on that button that says socialism, clear and present danger, and just click on and give a gift of some size just to say, hey, I'm paying attention to what you're doing, and I appreciate what you're doing, so we'd love to hear from you. So I'll talk more about that a little bit later this hour, but let's, if we can, come to the movie Unplanned. And I love how our friends at Family Research Council put it. They had to stare down a media blackout, an R rating, even a suspended Twitter account, but the pro-life movie Unplanned still defied all the odds. On opening weekend, the true story of former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson stunned Hollywood by climbing to number 5 on the box office charts and doubling projections with $6 million in ticket sales. And I love one of the comments from Carrie Solomon, who'd been on the program with us. He and Chuck Kolzelman actually were the producers, and they said, we're thrilled, we're gratified, we're so pleased that the American people have responded with such an enormous outpouring of support at the box office. We look forward to what happens in weeks ahead. Because, as I've already alluded to, you had just everything going against this movie. First of all, because it deals with the subject of abortion, and it only takes usually one liberal executive at a company, even one that actually is quite willing usually to take advertising, to actually refuse any kind of advertising. So the TV networks, with maybe one or two exceptions, all refuse to sell advertising time to unplanned, okay? The Motion Picture Association of America, I think, also trying to dissuade an audience, gave it an R rating. And so if that's not enough, then here's something else, which we talked about briefly yesterday with Alan West. But, of course, that was the third hour, and I know many of you that listen to this hour don't hear the third hour unless you're listening online. But after the Blockbusters weekend for a film, the social media page for the Unplanned movie account was mysteriously suspended, just as the followers jumped to 100,000. And I love how our friends at Family Research Council put it. Coincidence? Investor Mike Lindell, you might know him. He's the My Pillow guy. I got a chance to hear his testimony this last weekend. Said they don't want you to see this movie. Make your voices heard and tell your friends to go and see the movie this weekend. And, of course, the argument was, well, if nothing else, it was just an accident. I love what co-director Conselman said. He said, it's a sad state of affairs when the right to free speech gets shut down with a flick of a switch. Whether this was an executive decision by Twitter or a reaction by Twitter to complaints from those opposed to the pro-life viewpoint, the reason is unacceptable. And, of course, the argument is that this was just a mistake. But guess what? It was only after there was a groundswell of protest hitting Twitter CEO's Jack Dorsey's Twitter account, which we encouraged people to send yesterday, that all of a sudden it became live again. And so I can always expect the possibility that it was an accident. But the next time we see, like, I don't know, the Twitter account for Dumbo the movie, if that just goes down by accident or something else, then I'll maybe believe it a little bit more. But it's always the pro-life film. It's always the Christian film. And if nothing else, one of the other reactions to Unplanned is that it is pretty jarring for individuals. And Alexandra DeSanctis wrote about this particular issue, talking about the fact that if you actually watch the film, there's a place where Ashley Bratcher, playing Abby Johnson, comes home, and her daughter wants to know why there is blood splatters on her shoes. And she says, well, somebody had a bloody nose, but then afterwards turns to her husband and said, you know, abortion isn't pretty. And that is, of course, exactly what is causing so many individuals to try to shut this down, because indeed the film, especially from what I understand in the first initial 15 minutes, really helps you understand what Abby's experience was holding ultrasound tools while a Planned Parenthood doctor performed a surgical abortion. And it really begins to show what is taking place, also shows some of the visuals of her own chemical abortion, which she suffers through it at home and alone in the bathroom. So there are a number of people that have sometimes stayed away from Unplanned because they recognize that it's pretty jarring, but it does tell the truth. And it has been interesting to see that with all of these hurdles to overcome, Planned Parenthood banning all that they can, speaking out against it. Of course, the MMPA giving it an R rating. Even the unwillingness of many news outlets to even provide an opportunity for advertising, and for the Twitter account to actually mysteriously go silent. Even so, it doubled expectations, number 5th on the list, and now we'll see where it goes in the future. So I just thought it would be helpful for you to recognize that even when the other side tries to close down the argument, sometimes they're not very successful. And if that's a good reason for you to consider supporting Point of View, again, you've heard about this film because we've interviewed Abby Johnson. You've heard about this film because we actually interviewed the co-director, Carrie Solomon. And so as we go to a break, that would be a great time for you to visit the website, pointofview.net, and say, appreciate the fact you're speaking the truth. Here's my donation to help you continue doing that. Let's take a break. We will talk about Chick-fil-A right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Thomas Edsall, writing in the New York Times, cites a number of academic studies that demonstrate what most of us have already seen. Partisan hate is on the increase. One academic paper with the title Lethal Mass Partisanship found that just over 42% of the people in each political party views the opposition as downright evil. He then concludes that 48 million voters who cast ballots in the 2016 election believe that members of the opposition party are in league with the devil. He also cites another arresting statistic. What if the opposing party wins the 2020 election? How much do you feel violence would be justified then? The study found that 18% of Democrats and 13% of Republicans said violence would be justified on a scale ranging from a little to a lot. Later in his commentary, he cites another academic study that concludes that on both sides of the political aisle, the best informed voters are by far the most partisan. We would expect that well-educated, well-informed people might be able to pull the electorate out of this morass. David French, writing in National Review, repeats this idea. He says, in a time of crisis, American citizens often look for guidance and take their cues from the subset of American citizens who are most engaged and informed. Yet study after study is now showing that this cohort of Americans is driving the engine of American division. If we're to turn this around, we need pastors and Christian leaders working in the political arena to set an example. Political thought leaders are the ones driving much of the division and partisan hate in America. Christian leaders should not give into this division and conflict, but provide examples of grace and civility. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360. Joseph Farah.
Well, I think Point of View is one of the first radio programs to really give us alternative news, if you will, to ferret out those stories that the so-called mainstream media would never bring to people. That is what has always made your program fascinating. It's what has always delivered the audience to you. For people who are really hungry for the real story, for real information, there is no parallel to Point of View.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
So again, Joseph Farah with World Net Daily, an individual that certainly appreciates the fact that we provide an alternative. And right now we're going to be talking about that alternative to Chick-fil-A. Just before we do so, let me just encourage, again, some of you that have been listening to this particular hour. This has been added from 12 to 1. Of course, we've been on the national scene from 1 to 3 o'clock. That has been taking place for, well, in some respects, ever since we went up on satellite in 1982, and really ever since Marlon Maddox started the show in 1972, but certainly more recently in the 250-plus different radio stations. I think I heard Warren Kelly say 260 yesterday. That is the national show. But here, this hour, 12 to 1, is primarily a local show. I recognize we have some people in Minnesota, but most of you are listening in the Dallas area, and we would love to hear from you. If you appreciate the fact that we have spent so much time, for example, talking with Jonathan Saenz about the hashtag ban the Bible bills, or this particular issue we talked about with him on the Chick-fil-A issue, which has now become a national issue. It's not just San Antonio, but as we'll talk about now, it's also Buffalo and other places wanting to ban Chick-fil-A. We need to hear from you. So visit the website, pointofview.net. You can join for as little as $1 a day, $30 a month. Of course, we have a Liberty Club level, a Century Club level, but even just a one-time gift would be greatly appreciated. Or, of course, you can give us a call, 800-347-5151. I'll talk more about that in just a minute, but let me introduce somebody who's been on the program with us a number of times before. Keisha Russell, who is the Associate Counsel for First Liberty Institute, has been doing some media on this particular topic of Chick-fil-A. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of Central Florida, a master's degree from the University of Southern California, as well as, of course, her law degree from Emory University. And she joins me now by phone. Keisha, thank you for talking about this very important issue today here on Point of View.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we talked for quite a while about what was happening in San Antonio. And you had a council member there that said, you know, we don't want Chick-fil-A on the San Antonio airport because, after all, we want everybody to feel safe and welcome. And I love the response from Chick-fil-A, and they said, we agree with him that everyone is and should feel welcome. We have a fundamental code of conduct at Chick-fil-A. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We serve 140,000 people every single day without regard to race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. But that was not enough for the councilman, and apparently not enough for an assemblyman in the state of New York, who has now also prevented Chick-fil-A from actually having an opportunity to serve chicken sandwiches in the Buffalo airport. What have you found?
Well, I mean, I think that the facts just point to the fact that the city council members are the only ones discriminating here, because Chick-fil-A serves everyone, and the fact that those council members don't disagree with Chick-fil-A's religious beliefs, that's no reason to ban them from the airport. It's actually an unconstitutional reason to ban them.
Let's talk about that for just a minute, because the last time I wrote about this was 4 years ago, and that had to do with the Denver airport. And I was well aware that they were trying to prevent Chick-fil-A from actually being in the Denver airport. Now, any of us that have flown through Denver know that sometimes the line at the Chick-fil-A is really long. And the reason for that is some of the Denver attorneys sat down with the city council and said, you know what? This will result in a First Amendment lawsuit, because if you ban a restaurant for partisan political reasons, there will be a First Amendment lawsuit and you will lose. Now, we aren't at that stage yet, but talk about this letter that the individuals at First Liberty have actually sent to the Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, and others. What exactly have you done so far?
Okay, well, we sent the letter to Secretary Chao kind of outlining the unconstitutional actions of the city officials, just the unequal treatment of Chick-fil-A just because it's religious, the religious hostility that you can see in the statements that were made by the officials, not to mention viewpoint discrimination. They're expressly discriminating against Chick-fil-A and Chick-fil-A only because they don't agree with the fact that Chick-fil-A is a Christian organization that gives to other Christian organizations. And that's kind of a summary of the letter. You can see the entire thing at firstliberty.org, though. And
again, we have that at First Liberty. And let me just mention that in the Denver airport, the issue is that because they're pro-family, then that makes them anti-LGBTQ or whatever, how many letters you want to put after that, which I always think is funny. You know, I'm for the definition of marriage, which has existed for millennia, but okay, anti-LGBTQ, and of course then they had to recant on that. But the one in San Antonio I thought was the most interesting, because not only did they say we don't like the fact that there have been one or two individuals in positions of leadership at Chick-fil-A that have donated or said things about marriage, but we also don't like the fact that they've also donated to, are you ready for this? Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the Salvation Army, which just is a head shaker for just it, because now I would think, Keisha, we are having a precedent being set that says if I don't even like who you donated to, that could be used as a justification for preventing you from getting a permit to have a restaurant in, for example, an airport or other places in the particular community.
Yes, and the ironic thing is that by saying they don't want Chick-fil-A there, they don't agree with Chick-fil-A's charitable choices because of their religion, they are the only ones actually discriminating here. And I think it's really important to note that Chick-fil-A has made it very, very clear that they serve everyone. So really the city council members and even the city council and the government officials in Buffalo really have no leg to stand on legally to prevent Chick-fil-A from doing business in those cities.
Just before I let you go, let's, if we can, kind of outline this letter, which again is at our friends firstliberty.org. And you really take us through some of the legal arguments. First of all, evidence of pervasive, intentional religious discrimination by members of the city council, which you've already mentioned. But then the San Antonio City Council engages in unconstitutional religious discrimination, making them ineligible for federal grants. And then a whole section on how the city of San Antonio council members violated even local and federal policies requiring non-discrimination. That 6-page letter, at least it took 6 pages on my printer, actually illustrates that they really don't have a legal leg to stand on. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. They really don't have one. I think they're in violation at just about every level of the law. You know, the federal laws, the Constitution, the federal laws that require, if you accept federal funds, that you don't discriminate on the basis of religion, the state laws that protect religious exercise, the state constitution that protects religious exercise, and all the way down to the city and county ordinances that protect against non-discrimination for religion. So there's really no justification that these city council members can give other than they don't agree.
Well, again, Keisha Russell's been with us, and of course, we always love to have her in studio and carry on a longer conversation. But since we're coming to a break, Keisha, I just want to say thank you. Again, Associate Counsel with First Liberty Institute. You can go to firstliberty.org. Of course, we always have the link there. You can actually just click on the link right beneath her picture, and you'll find this letter. And I would encourage you to read it, post it, pass it on to your friends, and be in prayer about this issue of Chick-fil-A. So thank you, Keisha, for joining us today.
My pleasure, Kerby.
We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, I'm going to get into a couple of other issues, including quoting from my good friend Jim Dennison, who has a good piece today that I want to focus on. But as we go to a break, as I said just a minute ago, this has been an experiment. We've done this experiment for about a year, added an extra hour from 12 to 1. If you appreciate the kind of news and information commentary that we are giving to you and appreciate hearing from Congressman Van Taylor and hearing from today Keisha Russell and hearing from Jonathan Sines of Texas Values and also hearing the feature that we do of so many different ministries that maybe you have never heard about before, can I ask you to do one thing, and that is to go to our website right now, which is pointofview.net. Click on that button that gives you an opportunity to join the team, and then select some place in which you would make a donation. Any kind of donation of any size would be greatly appreciated. Just a way to say, you know, I appreciate the fact that you're focusing on these stories like Chick-fil-A. I probably hear more about this whole lawsuit that might develop with Chick-fil-A from what you're doing here. I learned more about what's happening in the Texas legislature. I'm learning more about what happens in Congress because of this special hour from 12 to 1. So those of you that are listening right now, we want to hear from you. The website is pointofview.net. Of course, the call-in line is 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can.
I'm the boss.
It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show. On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, if you would like to join with us, and I hope that you would, we encourage you to call our pledge line, 800-347-5151. You can join with us at any level, but we really have been talking a lot about this idea of joining us at $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. I recognize most of you probably can do something like that, and so we are looking for you to be the first person to step forward and join with us today as we are in the midst of our Truth Team. And again, we have all sorts of great resources available to you, so go to the website pointofview.net. And while we're talking about some of those resources, I thought I might just mention those resources are available at different levels as well. At the Liberty Club level, you receive some of these booklets that we make available to you on a regular basis. And, of course, we also send you a Bible stick as well as our Outlook magazine as a thank you for your gift at $1 a day, $30 a month. And so one of the things we certainly want to do is educate you, and that involves many of the issues. And we really do talk about a broad range of issues. You might recognize it already. We've talked about everything from unplanned and abortion and the movie to Chick-fil-A. One of the others I want to get into is something we also do very often is help you know how to defend your Christian faith. We also want to not only help you know how to articulate a biblical worldview, but how to defend a biblical worldview. And that's one of the reasons I want to read just a little bit from the piece by Jim Dennison today. Jim Dennison will be with us on Thursday, by the way, talking about Point of View, and we'll talk about some of the things he does with his daily article. But he decided today to tell the story of Jared Bilski. Now, you may not know that name. I didn't either, but he is a writer and a comedian, and he actually wrote a piece that appeared in the Washington Post. And the reason it caught the attention of Jim Dennison was the headline sort of said, "I'm not passing my parents' religion onto my kids, but I am teaching their values." And he talks about growing up in a Catholic church, attending Catholic school, and all the rest. And matter of fact, he even thought about going into the priesthood. Well, anyway, let's go to the article because it really helps us begin to know, how do I respond to people who say, I've given up on my faith? Because he says, I've lost faith in my faith. There are too many unanswered questions, too many problematic absolutes, too much fear-mongering, and way too much hypocrisy. For a religion that places such a premium on loving thy neighbor, it sure has a lot of restrictions on whom you were allowed to love. By the way, I love that because one of the things that we're going to be spending a fair amount of time talking about tomorrow is some of the material in this book by Arthur Brooks, Love Your Enemies. And, of course, I've already mentioned that. Matter of fact, my commentary today, even though it is based on a different essay that certainly is different, but it also gets into that whole issue of partisan hate and all of the rest. So it was kind of interesting to see that he makes that list. And for him, he said that the clergy abuse scandal was the last straw. He said, when it broke, I knew I'd never return. Now, first of all, let's recognize that he grew up in a Catholic church. Who knows what kind of true biblical teaching he receives in that church? I know nothing about the church. I know nothing about him. But I do know that sometimes people walk away from something that really isn't Orthodox Christianity, or they walk away from maybe not being able to get good answers to their questions. So I thought it would be kind of interesting because when we now are starting to see some of the research done by Pew, they're recognizing that the number of people who say they have no religion, those would be what are so-called the nones, atheist, agnostic, no preference, now exceeds the number of Catholics, just barely, but it certainly does exceed the number of Catholics, also the evangelicals. And so in some respects, he actually came up with some very good reasons, and we'll look at 4 of those in the interest of time, because it helps us understand, okay, if you have these questions, or people that you're ministering to have these questions, how do we respond? His first was unanswered questions. You know, it's kind of interesting to see that because that's one of the things that even the group I'm with, Pro Ministry, spends a fair amount of time trying to do, answer questions. You've heard us talk about the Mind Games Conference, where we spend time saying that no question is off the table. We promote Summit Ministries and encourage you to send young people off if they've got questions, to be with some of the best and brightest people in the Christian world to hear those answers. But again, Bilski's unanswered questions, he said, was the first reason that he lost faith in his faith. And Jim Dennison says, like many in the Pew survey, he seems to assume that if he doesn't know the answers, they don't exist. And sir, that's the flaw right there. Since he doesn't understand some of the dimensions of the Christian faith, he has chosen to abandon it. And imagine, though, I love what he says here, trying to apply this standard of intellectual comprehension to other areas of life. For instance, Jim Dennison says, I hope that Bilski doesn't limit his family's health care to the medical options he understands personally. But nevertheless, that's, a legitimate question. I have some answers that I need. Where can I get those? Well, again, one very good reason to support Point of View is we bring the best and the brightest not only to the various conferences that we promote, but you get to hear them right here on the program and give you answers. And many of those booklets I've been talking about are an attempt to try to give short answers for your kids, your grandkids that are asking some of those questions. So that's the first issue, unanswered questions. Number two, hypocrisy in the church. Again, Jared Bilski rejects hypocrisy in the church, troubled by the clergy abuse scandal. Well, first of all, that is tragic. And, of course, any single abuse victim is too many. And Jim Dennison rightly says we should hold ourselves to a higher standard than others in the culture and respond more quickly to the failures in our midst. But again, Jim Dennison's response is, it isn't rejecting the church because of the failings of some Christians akin to rejecting education because of the failings of some teachers, or rejecting medical care because of the abuse of some doctors. We wouldn't do it that way, would we? But yet that's the way people do it all the time when they want to leave the church. The third one is restrictions on whom you are allowed to love. Again, he says Bilski is especially upset with the church's restrictions on whom you are allowed to love. Since his father is homosexual, he talks about, his frustrations are again understandable. But again, Jim Dennison asks a really good question. Does he then believe that there should be no restrictions? What about the number of people in a sexual relationship? What about their age? What about their biological relationship? What about other species? And again, these are all HTML links to other very troubling articles which show that lots of times people say, I don't like the restrictions, and then they turn right around and have other restrictions, because you rarely meet somebody that says, no, anybody can be involved sexually with anybody or anything or any species at any time. Somewhere along the line, they draw some lines. They just don't like the way that that particular line was drawn by God. But anyway, that gets us to the fourth point, morality without God, because Jared Bilski believes that he can pass along the morality he learned from his mother without attending her church. This is, we can be good without God claim. It is a significant issue that he's going to devote to tomorrow's article. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit more. But again, I will acknowledge that, yes, I've met people that can be good without God, but their basis for being good without God doesn't have any moral foundation. It's just, well, I prefer to be good rather than bad. I'm using the remnants of Christianity to come to that conclusion, but it doesn't work very well. So if nothing else, just this article that appeared in the Washington Post by Jared Bilski, I think gives us an opportunity to recognize that he is like many others that are walking away from their faith. And as a result, there are 4 good reasons he believes for walking away from his faith. And yet we can and have provided answers right here on Point of View to provide answers for why you should maintain your faith. And so, again, we talk about those issues that oftentimes other peoples are ignoring. We provide you with biblical issues and ideas. We provide documentation. You will find today all sorts of articles. The one that we just posted a minute ago about Chick-fil-A. You'll see that we have 2 on the issue of socialism, because we're going to be talking with Robert Knight in just a few minutes, why democratic socialism won't work and the false promises of socialism. And then in the third hour, we're going to have Chuck Bentley with us. And he, of course, is with Crown Financial, and we're posting his particular article, Is Socialism Biblical? So if you find yourself saying, well, I'd like to know a little bit more about some of these issues, certainly what you should do, first of all, is go to our website, pointofview.net, find those articles, print them out, maybe put them on your Facebook page, Twitter feed, send them to some people that you're having a discussion with. But while you're there, can I ask some of you to maybe just stop for a moment, click on that banner to join the Truth Team. For as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, you can join us. Of course, there's higher levels as well. Maybe join with the Liberty Club, $50 a month. We'll be sending these booklets to you every single month of all sorts of very important issues, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute when Brad Fisk joins us in studio. And even some of you might want to join at the century level. But whatever you do, even if you just send a one-time gift, it's a way to say, I appreciate the fact that you have this additional hour from 12 to 1. Anything that you can do to help us out would be greatly appreciated. If you'd like to talk to someone, the pledge line number is open, 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
If I hear it from somewhere else, I don't consider it credible until I hear it from Point of View. There are so few people fighting on the front lines for our freedoms. I think Point of View certainly is one of those. And without ministries like Point of View, we really don't have much hope for the future of our children, our grandchildren. They just really help on a daily basis protect the freedoms that we enjoy today. I can't see a better way to invest in our future than to support Point of View.
Point of View is absolutely valuable to the listeners who want to hear the truth. Today, the media, you just cannot trust them, whether it's print or electronic media, and we depend on Point of View to deliver to us the truth. Without Point of View, I do not know where people would turn to get the message that they need to hear about truth in our culture today. Please, please consider supporting Point of View.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
One of the things we've heard so often are that when Marlon Maddox started the show, it was just to try to provide an alternative to the mainstream media. Now people say there's a lot of information out, but I don't know whether it's true unless I hear it on Point of View. So
that's
Brad
right.
Fisk with me.
We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
We really do. It's constant feedback. And that is, I don't know what I would do without you, because I don't know where else to believe what you're telling me is true.
Well, and again, one of the things we talked about even earlier this hour was the whole issue of unplanned, and then Chick-fil-A. A little bit later, we're going to get into Medicare for all and what that really means, and the whole issue of socialism with Robert Knight. And we do this, Brad, as you well know, because we recognize that sometimes people aren't getting the full truth. Maybe they're not getting any coverage at all. How many people even know that there's a movie called Unplanned, since they prevented Unplanned from buying advertising on many of those outlets?
Yep.
And we, of course, talked with Carrie Solomon earlier in the week about some of that. Last week. And so, again, we just recognize that we're providing a source of truth, and that's why we encourage people to visit the website, pointofview.net, or to give us a call, 800-347-5151, and become one of the members of the Truth Team.
That's right. You know, we cannot do this by ourselves. We don't even pretend that we can do this by ourselves, because we can't. And we rely on our listeners. Now, that'd be you and you and you. You just getting in your car and tuning us in. We rely on you for the ability to continue to tell the truth and to be a source where people can come. But we're asking you to financially share with us. If you could just talk to the Lord and see what he would have you do, and then give us a call with your very best gift. I got a suggestion. There's an easy entry level here called $1 a day, which when you join the Truth Team, that's $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 for the year. We would love to hear from you to join the team. Be a part of what's going on here. Now, maybe you can't do that. A single gift is fine. There's other monthly levels of giving.
The Liberty Club, which is, again, $50 a month.
Yes.
And that's where you receive these kind of little booklets that
Those
we
are
talked
awesome.
about.
Those are really
Capitalism
good.
and Socialism. We're going to be talking about that in just a minute. Campus Unrest, the most recent one. Archaeology. Of course, we have one on anti-Semitism coming out, and all the rest. And then, of course, even the Century Club level as well.
That's right. And the Century Club level is simply $100 a month, $1,200 a year. And that may sound like a lot to some people, and it is. But other people, it's not. And it's very doable. And we're doing something special, Kerby, this year in making the military version of the Bible stick from Faith Comes by Hearing available to 2 soldiers for every century gift that we take. So if you pledge at the $100 a month level, you're releasing 2 of those Bible sticks, the military version, to 2 soldiers who are overseas. They're deployed. They always get the first priority.
Yes, and again, I just wanted to show what that looks like, because here is the actual box that it comes in.
Yep.
And this is military grade, as they like to
Yes,
say.
it
There are
is.
certain things that only people in the military can have. This is a little different than the Bible stick that we're going to send to you as well.
Yes.
But 2 of those will go to those in the military through the chaplains, and then they'll also have the same information, some of the DVDs, I guess the CD, and the MP3, so that the family can follow along as well. So
That's
this
right.
is a way you can benefit, but also pass that benefit on to someone else.
So a couple of ways to get that Bible stick. Anybody who gives that gift of $1 a day or more, you're going to get your own copy of that. It'll be a different color, the same device, but again, different design. And so we're encouraged, as you give us a call, and be the first one this hour to say, you know what? I'm going to join at the century level. I really want to join the team, make a significant difference, and perhaps help somebody find salvation through the listening of God's word, these soldiers who are so sacrificial in how they serve us. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. 5151. You can call right now. You'll get straight in. It's a 2 to 3 minute call. You do not have to have the money in hand. It's a pledge for the future, and that's important to understand. You can also give at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. net.
I might also mention that this hour, lots of times you are hearing on our local stations some commercials. You might say, well, that's really great. Well, you got commercials. Yeah, well, the commercials help the network, but the commercials don't help us.
Right.
So even as you hear those commercials, sometimes we'll have somebody who call and say, I don't like the commercial. Well, sorry, it's not. I didn't make that decision about that commercial. So recognize that you are helping us to keep this particular hour, especially on the air. And that's why I wanted to hear from you right now, because in just a few minutes, we're going to be on the national program. We're going to be on 260 plus stations. And as a result, maybe this is an opportunity for you to say, I appreciate what you are doing right now to educate us about what's happening in the Texas legislature when you talk with Jonathan Saenz, what is happening in Congress when we talk with Congressman Van Taylor almost every week, when we feature some of these local ministries and those kinds of things. And that is all helpful as well. So again, we encourage you to visit the website pointofview.net, or again, give us a call at 800-347-5151. I look in there and I see a number of individuals that are actually sitting by the phones and ready for some phone calls. So that's why we want you to call right now.
We do, and here's the phone number to do it. And so we'd love to see some lines fill up even this moment while we're talking. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Perhaps you'll be the first one today to give a gift of $1 a day or more, and pick up your copy of the Bible Stick as a thank you gift. And you can also give online, pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Well, again, we would love to hear from you. I know the first phone call my wife got yesterday was from somebody who was a skeptic and just making fun of the broadcast, and finally she sort of gave up on them. But she ended the day by talking with somebody that said they appreciated the breadth and the depth and the online surfaced information and all the rest. So I hope that you won't be one of those individuals that sits back and say, I'll let someone else call, because then you know who calls. Some of the people that are just making fun of the program, just trying to tie up the phone lines, not even there to help advance the ministry, but to do just the opposite. So you be one that says, you know, in this last hour, you've talked about everything from Chick-fil-A to abortion to the movie Unplanned. We've talked a little bit about socialism. We're going to talk about Medicare for all. Just think of all the things we've talked about just in 1 hour.
And we're almost out of breath, but we're really not. We're good for another couple hours to go. So I'm looking through the glass. Okay, yes. I can see the phone center. Just for fun, could one of you go to the phone right now and I can see the phone ring and see you calling in? 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Looking for somebody right now to give us a call with your very best gift.
Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to give you a heads up. Robert Knight will be with us.
Yes.
We have two of his articles, Why Democratic Socialism Won't Work and the False Promises of Socialism. And then in the third hour, of course, Chuck Bentley will be with us, and we'll be talking about his particular article, Is Socialism Biblical? And I might just mention, those of you that actually send in your gift, you may want to get a copy of this Capitalism and Socialism booklet that we make available. So we've made it very easy. Just call that number, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Perfect time to call, or even to visit the website, pointofview.net. We need to hear from you, and we'll be back with more right after this.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can. It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show. On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. I want to start off with a victory and a challenge. But again, this is our second day of our Truth Team. And, of course, our good friend Brad Fisk in studio with us. And in just a few minutes, we're going to be talking with Robert Knight and a little bit later Chuck Bentley. So I thought we'd talk about a victory first.
Let's
do.
Just for fun.
Really interesting because I did talk about this briefly yesterday, but we now have a lot more facts. And that is the movie Unplanned. I love what our friends at Family Research Council said. They had to stare down a media blackout, R rating, and even a suspended Twitter account. But nevertheless, they doubled expectations, doubled the projections made for this, and climbed to number 5 on the box office charts.
And still happening, I understand. The movie's still playing.
And it'll be around for a while now because this has been successful. You know, we have, of course, had Abby Johnson on. The movie's about her. We've had Carrie Solomon on, who I'm going to quote from in just a minute, who is one of the co-directors. But as we have mentioned before, several TV networks decided not to sell advertising time, which is just amazing to me. They sell advertising time for some of the worst films out there, and to not do that. So that's it, number one. Number two, then, of course, the MMPA gave them an R rating, which, of course, then, as we talked about yesterday with Colonel Allen West, if you're a certain age, you can get an abortion, but if you're a certain age, you can't go to the movie about abortion. So think that one through.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the victory. You might remember yesterday, interestingly enough, that Colonel Allen West had a suggestion, and that is to send your Twitter feed to the CEO director of Twitter, Jack Dorsey. Well, his account got so hit that even though the unplanned movie account mysteriously was suspended at just about the time when they had reached 100,000 followers. They said, oh, no, this was just a mistake. And so it suddenly went live again. So first of all, we have the success of twice as many people going to the movies as even the industry thought. And that set a great signal to Hollywood, really stunned a few people. But second of all, for those of you that took the time to send your hashtag to Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, it seems like it made a difference, because one of the co-directors actually said, it's a sad state of affairs when the right to free speech gets shut down with a flick of a switch, but whether this was an executive decision or an accident. Why is it those accidents never happen for, like, Dumbo the movie or any of the others out there right now? Only seems to happen to the conservatives. But anyway,
a little bit transparent, I guess.
So anyway, I just wanted to start with a success. And, of course, one challenge. You'll see our first article here is about the fact that not only do we have Chick-fil-A, which has been banned from the San Antonio airport. I don't think that's going to last very long, and we'll be talking about that with Kelly Shackelford on Friday. But then in Buffalo, New York, they decided to do the same. Assemblyman there took issue with Chick-fil-A's Christian stance on Facebook, and so that caused the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority to decide against having Chick-fil-A there, and we'll see where that goes. And even for those of you that like to listen on our podcast, the first interview I did in our local program just an hour ago with Keisha Russell at First Liberty, they're actually raising some very serious concerns about that.
Yes.
And you're from Colorado. And you probably have noticed that there is a Chick-fil-A in the Denver airport. And 4 years ago, I wrote a commentary about the fact that they were trying to shut down Chick-fil-A in the Denver airport. And that's when a couple of the lawyers with the Denver City Council sat down with the Denver Council and said, this will result in a First Amendment lawsuit. And if they can prove, and I'm afraid they can, that this was due to partisan political bias against Chick-fil-A, you will lose. And so you know as well as I do, going through the Denver airport, it's there. And sometimes the longest lines are right there by the Chick-fil-A. So we'll see where this one goes. So that's the challenge, but it's just one of the reasons why we encourage you to consider what you can do to support this ministry, because we're going to tell you things that you will not hear anywhere else.
That's correct, and we hear that all the time, and we invite you to, this is Truth Team Week, day 2, and we are coming to you like we do a couple times a year and say, you know what? We cannot do this by ourselves. This is a team effort. That's why we use the term Truth Team 360. The idea is you're part of the team as you give. And we're inviting you initially to consider becoming a part of the Truth Team at the $1 a day level. Okay, so that's $30 a month, $360 a year. And we've got a thank you gift that goes along with that. It is the Bible stick from Faith Comes by Hearing. That is an MP3 player preloaded with the New Testament, music, sound effects, word-for-word translation of the ESV version of the Bible, and it's yours. It's an actual player. You can plug it in. It's got batteries and headsets and everything, and you can take this little device and you can listen to God's Word anytime you want. Or, hey, better yet, you can share that with a college student, perhaps a single young person in your life that you are concerned about where they're at spiritually. This is a gift you can give to them as a thank you gift for who they are, and allow them to get the benefit of God's Word in their heart and mind. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Won't you call and become a Truth Team member at $1 a day or more? That's $360 for the year. You can also do it online at pointofview.net.
I might just mention we have people sitting by the phones right now waiting for your phone call. And some of you might say, well, I can do $1 a day, but I want to challenge at least one or two of you out there to consider maybe joining us at the next level.
Okay.
It's the Liberty Club, and that's $50 a month. One of the benefits I'm holding up right now for those of you watching online are these booklets. There's one on constitutional interpretation, one on archaeology, one on campus unrest. Hey, capitalism and socialism. We're going to be talking about that in just a minute. The theme this week is socialism, clear and present danger. So you'll receive the Bible stick. You'll receive, of course, the Outlook magazine. You receive these booklets, and those certainly are something that I would encourage you to consider. And then just real quickly before we take a break, we also have the Century Club, and this is something else I like to talk about, because not only will we send you the Bible stick, but we'll send 2 of these Bible sticks to individuals serving in the military.
That are deployed, that's right.
Yes.
And it's a military spec product. It's the same thing, but it's just a different design that is military spec. And 2 of those will be released as you give at the Century Club level of $100 a month. That's $1,200 for the year. And we invite you to join the Century Club. A lot of you cannot do that. We understand that. But you know what? Some of you can. And we're really looking forward to that. And even somebody who could give more, $5,000, $10,000 gift. We've had that happen before. So here's the phone number to do what you can do. Participate. We're looking for 100% participation. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. And they can give online, too.
They certainly can, and that is pointofview.net. So, again, go to pointofview.net. You will see, of course, information about the guests, and click on that banner that says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger. We're going to be talking about that with Robert Knight in just a minute. Just click on that button that says Join the Team Now, and you'll see all the various giving levels and opportunities. And again, you can find some place where you can fit in, and we really do need to hear from you. And I believe we have what?
A match. Every dollar you give right now will be doubled. So is that exciting or what? 800-347-5151. Come on, let's get 5 or 6 or 7 new members of the Truth Team at $1 a day. 800-347-5151.
We want to see those phones ring, and this is a good time to call before we get to some of our content with Robert Knight. So give us a call, 800-347-5151. Be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Thomas Edsall, writing in the New York Times, cites a number of academic studies that demonstrate what most of us have already seen. Partisan hate is on the increase. One academic paper with the title Lethal Mass Partisanship found that just over 42% of the people in each political party views the opposition as downright evil. He then concludes that 48 million voters who cast ballots in the 2016 election believe that members of the opposition party are in league with the devil. He also cites another arresting statistic. What if the opposing party wins the 2020 election? How much do you feel violence would be justified then? The study found that 18% of Democrats and 13% of Republicans said violence would be justified on a scale ranging from a little to a lot. Later in his commentary, he cites another academic study that concludes that on both sides of the political aisle, the best informed voters are by far the most partisan. We would expect that well-educated, well-informed people might be able to pull the electorate out of this morass. David French, writing in National Review, repeats this idea. He says, in a time of crisis, American citizens often look for guidance and take their cues from the subset of American citizens who are most engaged and informed. Yet study after study is now showing that this cohort of Americans is driving the engine of American division. If we're to turn this around, we need pastors and Christian leaders working in the political arena to set an example. Political thought leaders are the ones driving much of the division and partisan hate in America. Christian leaders should not give into this division and conflict, but provide examples of grace and civility. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hello, Point of View listener. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Point of View Radio is so important to the Christian community in our country. Kerby Anderson and the team there deserve your financial support during this time. They don't ask a lot, but when they do ask, they need your financial support to make the ministry whole, to keep promoting the gospel and the truth about what's going on in our country. We consider them kindred spirits and partner in ministry at Point of View with us here at American Family Radio. So if you would, write them a check, give them a donation with your credit card, whatever you can do to help them keep the cause of Christ before the public on their radio program, Point of View.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
A good friend, Tim Wildman at American Family Radio, American Family Association, and going all the way back. Marlon Maddox started this program in 1972, and of course it went up on satellite in the 1980s. And when Don Wildman started developing a radio network, he made sure he carried Point of View. And Tim Wildman tells a story that when they were running the mimeograph, remember those things?
I do.
He would have to turn up the radio really loud so he could hear that while he was working that, and everybody in American Family Association could hear the broadcast. So a lot of history for Point of View.
There is. And there's more than history. There's legacy. And that has a different kind of a meaning than history. So there's legacy that must continue. The voice of Point of View must continue, especially right now with what's going on. It just feels to me like all the anchors of life have kind of just been pulled up and we're drifting around, and we will not let that happen. You come to Point of View, we will help you give sanity to the insanity that's going on around us in our cultural war, and you can help us by financially supporting us. We really do need your help. We cannot do this without you. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Looking for 3 callers right now. We're looking right into the phone center and invite you to join the Truth Team.
Please give us a call, and we are going to spend some time talking with our friend Robert Knight. And we've posted a couple of articles. Some of these he's written a while back, but since our theme this week is socialism, clear and present danger, why democratic socialism won't work, the false promises of socialism. Robert Knight, of course, is a good friend of this ministry. He's been with us so many times before, a weekly columnist for the Washington Times, Town Hall, One News Now, Barbed Wire, and others, with both a bachelor's and master's degree from American University. And, of course, one of the things he brings is having worked for the Los Angeles Times, but also having held senior positions at the Family Research Council, Concerned Women for America, the Heritage Foundation, Coral Ridge Ministries, the Media Research Center, and others, really brings a wealth of information. So, Robert Knight, welcome back to Point of View.
Hey, Kerby, always good to be on Point of View with you.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, of course, we're going to get into the details about socialism, but one of the other sub-themes is, can you believe this is happening? You know, or you can't make this stuff up. If I had told you years ago, even when you were at the Los Angeles paper or when you were with some of these ministries, that there would be people running for the presidency with the kind of socialist agenda that isn't just held by Bernie Sanders, but now seems to be held by almost all of those leading contenders, would you have believed it?
I don't think I would have, Kerby. It's moved so far to the left so fast, it's making your head spin. The Democrats have really thrown off the shackles of restraint and are embracing socialism in every form you can imagine. In fact, a good friend of mine, E.W. Jackson, went to the Communist Party website and looked at all their goals, and then he compared them to the Democratic Party candidates' statements, and, you know, there's not a whole lot of difference.
That's amazing. Yeah.
You know, they're risking the C word at this point. They've gone past the S word, socialism, and now they're risking the C word, communism.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about, since we are talking about socialism, clear and present danger, and people can go to our website and find the articles by you, and also when they click on that particular banner, that's a way in which they can give to the Truth Team. But I pulled out one of your articles from a couple of years ago, and I thought it was interesting because you're pointing out, okay, even if you assume that democratic socialism is not communism, which is not a good assumption, but let's just assume it for the moment, you say that still the idea is the people collectively are supposed to make all sorts of economic decisions. And Brad, I love what he says here. Have you ever been on a small committee? Can you imagine trying to get a collective agreement on literally millions of economic decisions made by people every day?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons, Robert Knight, why democratic socialism just never works.
No, it didn't work in the Soviet Union with their 5-year plans where people at the top were supposed to make all the decisions for everybody. They didn't know what people needed. They imposed what they thought they needed. One thing I'd like to tell today's millennials who are leaning socialist, according to surveys, is you guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. Socialism is the essence of the government telling everybody what to do.
That's right.
You know, you just get out from under your parents and maybe your colleges. But now you're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want. And I think it's because the word socialism hasn't been defined for them properly. They think it means equality, tolerance, sharing, compassion, all kinds of virtues. But what they don't understand is socialism is entirely about power. It's about coercion. It's about government coercion, the worst kind. And once they understand that, I would hope the scales would fall from their eyes.
Well, and again, one of the reasons we have this little booklet on capitalism and socialism, of course, you've written about that as well, is because people don't properly define it. And your story reminds me, or your comment reminds me of a story of a young man that I've met, and he was just complaining about his parents had all these rules and all these regulations and everything. So I said, well, I guess you're looking forward to going to college. He said, no, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to join the Marines. I said, what? If you think you haven't seen rules and regulations now, just wait till you get into the Marines, which, first of all, I applauded him for wanting to do that and serve the country. But that's the point. Yeah. Young people today honestly don't understand what socialism looks like. But just the other day, we had Debbie D'Souza, who is married to Dinesh D'Souza, and she was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and she can remind us perhaps only so well what it looked like in a country that had prosperity and then was taken over by Hugo Chavez and turned to democratic socialism.
Yeah, Venezuela is Exhibit A right now. I mean, we've had communist countries since 1917 when the Russian Revolution happened that have proved disastrous. But Venezuela is unfolding before our very eyes with thousands of people fleeing the country, famine now threatening a country that's sitting on the richest oil reserves in the world, people eating zoo animals, inflation on untold levels, kind of like Germany in the 1930s or 20s, you know, when people were having wheelbarrows full of money just to buy a loaf of bread. I mean, things are really bad in Venezuela, and the government doesn't want to let go. They're socialists, or they're actually communists in power, and even though the people are desperate to overthrow them, they're living under the vice, or squeezed in this vice of power that's aided by the Cuban government. That's another thing they're not being told, is that the Cuban security apparatus has been orchestrating crackdowns on the opposition party and anybody who doesn't go along with the Nicolas Maduro communist regime.
Well, again, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, continue our conversation with Robert Knight. This particular article, Why Democratic Socialism Won't Work, is really well written and is one that you can hand to your millennials that are convinced that socialism is a good answer. And, of course, we are hearing people talking about everything from Medicare for all to the Green New Deal to some of the things we'll talk about in just a minute, the idea of universal health care, free public college, amnesty for illegals, and the advancement of LGBT issues, which causes us to lose our religious liberty. What's at stake here, Brad, is the future of our country.
That's right. Absolutely. And it's so important to ask right now, this week, during Truth Team Week, for you to join the team financially. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do this by ourselves, and we have been told by countless individuals, guests on the program, friends of the ministry, that our voice is essential. I believe it is essential, but do you believe it is essential? Do you believe that Point of View should continue to tell the truth with a capital T or not? This is kingdom business with a capital K, and we ask you to please join the Truth Team. 800-347-5151. It's a perfect time, Kerby, during the break for them to go to the phones and make that $1 a day gift. Join the Truth Team. Get a free Bible stick as a thank you, but most important at all, stand with us. Could we hear from 5 of you during this break joining the Truth Team? 800-347-5151. Point of View, listener-supported radio. That number again.
1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. We need your pledge. You don't have to have the money right now.
No.
We just need 100% participation. So again, 1-800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can. It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show. On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again in studio with me, Brad Fisk, as it is the second day of our Truth Team
It
week.
is.
And we have by phone a little bit longer Robert Knight. Later on, I might just mention we have Chuck Bentley because his piece is Socialism Biblical? That's something I address in my little booklet here on socialism and capitalism, but we'll leave that for the next hour because that's another issue that needs to be addressed. But Robert Knight, you've been with us so many times before. Of course, you've worked with other ministries that raise support and depend upon listeners and donors to keep the organization going. What would you say to some of our listeners in terms of their need to support this ministry so we can keep getting this information out to the general public?
Well, nothing argues for that more, Kerby, than how the media have behaved themselves over the last 2 years since Donald Trump was elected. They've been dishonest, totally biased. They've been lying to the American people. They've been behaving not like journalists, but like left-wing propagandists. And I don't see it getting any better. I am unfortunately having to subscribe to the Washington Post every morning because I live in the Washington area, and it helps me in what I do. But I've seen it get worse over the years to where you can't really find news in it. You just find propaganda right on the front page, like opinion articles. Same with CNN, MSNBC, the networks. They've ceased being reliable sources of news. So to get the truth, you have to tune into Point of View and all other alternative sources. And Point of View is one of the best because you guys are careful about who you have on, except for me. I mean, last year, I suppose.
No, you're one of the top of the list. You know that.
Well, apart from me, you have excellent guests, and they convey truth quickly, efficiently, and you guys ask great questions. So I have people or relatives up in Maine, and they always listen to you, and you're all over the country, and you're one of the most reliable sources. So if anybody's listening and wants to keep this going, they really ought to consider donating to Point of View.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me get back to one of your articles here, and you have this whole list, universal health care and free college tuition and amnesty and all sorts of other issues. If people go to our website, when we talk about join the team, we've got Medicare for all, Green New Deal, wealth tax, guaranteed income for all, 70% tax rate for higher incomes. And even yesterday, we were talking with Colonel Alan West about reparations and all sorts of stuff. Part of the problem, I think, Robert, is we're only getting partial understanding of what is true and what is not, and we're only getting a partial list. If you put this list together, it just takes your breath away, doesn't it?
Oh, it's stunning. You look at maybe 10 positions that the progressive left has now, and you realize none of them is supported by the American people, which is why they're trying to rig elections by allowing in hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, weakening election laws. The House under Nancy Pelosi recently passed the H.R. 1, the For the People Act.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a tip-off when it's for the people, It's so communist sounding, isn't it? The People's Republic,
Yeah.
And it just weakens, it nationalizes elections. It takes the state's constitutional power away to set requirements. It weakens ID laws that secure the ballot box. It even would undo the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court, which is very important in allowing people to pool their resources and buy campaign ads. It's a form of free speech, and the court recognized it, that free speech isn't just for individuals. It's for individuals who want to team up with others, like the National Rifle Association or unions, for that matter. It was a good decision, and now this H.R. 1 would undo it. It would take forever to go into all the crazy things that are in that, but just the Green New Deal. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just the other day admitted that it's more than about the environment; it's about social justice. And of course, that's a loaded term that really means redistributing income, using government power, which is the essence of socialism.
Well, again, what you pointed out is when in H.R. 1, even the ACLU wrote a letter to members of Congress telling them to vote against it. Or when you're talking about the Green New Deal, and even the former President Barack Obama sits down with the the freshman House Democrats and said, I appreciate bold ideas, but you got to look at the price tag. So it shows you how out of step this is. And I think there is a sense, Robert, in which people don't realize what is coming down the track if we don't get positive, contrary information out, if we don't provide reasonable critique. And so that's one of the reasons why we love to have people like you. And of course, yesterday we had Gary Bauer and Alan West and all sorts of other individuals on the program to tell the truth, because I don't get the sense that MSNBC's calling you up every day to sit around a panel and talk about some of these issues, right?
I can't remember last time I was on MSNBC.
Yeah.
It's been years.
Yeah,
I really was on, and CNN and a number of other networks. But no, point of view is very important, because if the church woke up, if people got involved and realized their freedom is at stake, that the kind of country their grandchildren or children and grandchildren are growing up in isn't going to be recognizable if they don't get involved, they need to be informed so they can get involved. They're not going to get it from mainstream media. So the point of view is great for not only informing people, but activating them as well, which is what we need desperately.
You know, Robert, Brad here, and one of the things that concerns me, and it must concern others, at least all my friends and people around me, and that is the timing of this thing. It just feels to me like there's a continual erosion of truth, but it's 1 milli-inch at a time. It's kind of like the frog in the water and the boiling. That's the illustration I think of. What can we do to really make sure that right now we make something happen? Because I'm afraid what's going to happen is, 5, 10 years, whatever, down the road, it'll be too late to make the change. But it's not too late now, don't you think?
No, I agree completely. It's not too late. Look what happened in 2016. I mean, look at the election. And that was because people got off the couch and got involved. They thought, my gosh, we're going to lose our country if we don't. They have to have that same kind of urgency now, especially since the House got turned over to far leftists, and they're aiming to take the Senate. And if that happens, I hate to think what will happen to our country, but it doesn't have to. If just a slightly larger percentage of Christians gets involved, things could go very well. Most elections are decided by a few percentage points, and the left is very good at turning out their base. But the conservatives and Christians in particular have a built-in network of churches. The left doesn't have anything like that. Maybe universities, I don't know, and PBS subscribers. But we've got churches. And I would encourage any pastors listening that you really have to take off the gloves. I will say my pastor in Virginia, after the state legislature voted basically for infanticide, abortion right up to the point of birth, he named the legislators by name and said, you need to defeat them next time they're up at the ballot box. He has every right to do that. A lot of pastors don't think they do, but they do. The IRS is not going to shut down my church because our pastor had the courage to name the people who need to be defeated. I think we have to see that all over the country.
I would certainly agree. Robert, I always appreciate your work. And, of course, we do point people to some of your books as well as to the website there. So if people want to know a little bit more, of course, you have A Strong Constitution. What would America look like if we followed the law, which is one that I have certainly enjoyed. And we'll get you on to really talk about that in more details in the future. But we have a link to your link to the website that you always have, as well as to the Washington Times, so people can find some of those very good articles. And I appreciate you joining us today here on Point of View.
Appreciate it, Kerby and Brad. I always enjoy being on this program because it's such a good one.
Well, thank you. And I might just mention his book as well. This our booklet we have on constitutional interpretation is a good one, and it certainly relates to the most recent book that he has, A Strong Constitution. We'll talk about that as well. But we need to actually give some of those individuals sitting around right now waiting for the phone call something to do. So what are we going to do?
Well, I think what we need to do is go to the phone. If you really believe that now is the time to do something to staunch the spread, the cancerous spread of this thought pattern that's going on here. There's a war going on. It's a cultural war, and we are willing to stand up. We are willing to continue to tell the truth. But ladies and gentlemen, we can't do it without you. Won't you please give us a call? 800-347-5151. Talk about timing of your gift. Couldn't be better. And every dollar's doubled right now during
That's
our mass
right.
challenge.
So
800-347-5151. Now is the time, right now, to step in at some level and stand with us. 800-347-5151, or you can give at pointofview.net.
And again, we encourage your phone call right now, 800-347-5151. He was talking about the number of Christians voting. I'm going to give you some facts and figures about that, but you need to give us a call first. 1-800-347-5151. Need to hear from you. We'll be back right after this.
5 of you call right now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
The things that catch my attention are the abortion issue, and it's so important for people to understand the value of life. And to me, that is number one in our lives. And the shows that I've heard on that have impacted. It just gives me kind of a different venue to be able to explain things differently to people. And I have kept in touch with the ministry, and I do donate each month because I feel like it's an important way for people to understand the worldview and that Christ taught, and We have just tried very hard to instill that in our children. Thank you so much for your service, guys, because you do have one.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Second day of the Truth Team Week, and of course we have Brad Fisk in studio, as well as Warren Kelly, president of Point of View. And Brad, we did see some of the phone calls coming in, but we still need a few more, don't we?
There's lines open right now, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
You know, Warren, one of the things we talked about with Robert Knight is that all of a sudden, if you put all these together, and it's just not just Medicare for all, which we'll get into in just a minute, or the Green New Deal, or reparations, or a guaranteed income, and he even brought in some others I hadn't even thought about in terms of the advancing the LGBT agenda and then removing the possibility of religious liberty. When you look at all of this, it's pretty overwhelming, isn't it?
It is. And, you know, there are times that I look at that and I think there's no way the American public is ever going to go for this. There's no way that they're going to elect a candidate that these are their positions. But we have to keep in mind the electorate is changing.
Yes.
You know, the baby boomers are aging out. The silent generation, the older generation, is kind of aging out. And the millennials and Gen Z coming up behind that are getting even bigger. So this next election, the 2020 election, the Gen Z and the millennials together will be 37% of the electorate.
And a lot of them say they want to live in a socialist country, you found.
Yes, I mean, over half. You have, 52% of millennials. If you ask them what type of country we would like to live in, they would say either a socialist or a communist nation.
Now, I can't prove this, but I believe if you took that same set of millennials and you made sure they had the second paragraph and the third paragraph of what all this stuff is and what it really means, a whole bunch of them would say, nah, never mind, I changed my mind, I don't want to do that anymore.
You're exactly right, because the same survey went back and it gave them those, the multiple choice definitions, and if you had them pick out what the definition of socialism was, only 24% could get it right.
Yep.
So more than 3/4 couldn't define the term. So they're voting for something that they don't understand. And when you talked yesterday with Debbie D'Souza, talking about the impact of where this goes and what happened to Venezuela.
Yep.
I mean, this is why we need point of view. This is why we need the ability to help people understand what these terms mean and what the outcomes are. It's not just here's what it is, but it's also where is this going to go? Mm-hmm. There are so many gaps in the education system, in the thinking of our people. We need to help fill in those gaps, and that's what, Kerby, you do so well every single day.
Yeah, that's what one of the things is, of course, we were talking about the fact that you have books on Christians and economics, but if you look at this one, Brad, you'll notice this is in Spanish. So we have it not just in English, but Spanish, because we recognize how important that is as well. Of course, we have these little booklets on the whole idea of capitalism and socialism, because we just need to do a whole education process. And you and I have talked about the fact, and I talked about it yesterday with Gary Bauer, it's been taught in the classroom, and it's been something that's been teaching for some time. So we have to do if you will, re-education, don't we?
That's right. We're actually reaping what we've sown as a culture, unfortunately, in many, many ways that are just not biblical. Remember one thing, folks. We stand for biblical truth. There's a real difference between what a lot of people call truth and what biblical truth is. And we at Point of View stand for biblical truth. That's a huge distinctive you must not lose sight of. It's so important to understand. When we say we need you to support us here at Point of View, it's not really us who need you to do it. It's those millennials that you need to support Point of View. It's those others who are ignorant and not sure how to vote because they are confused. Those are the ones that need the influence from Point of View, not just the radio program, but all the other things that we do collectively. And your gift at 800-347-5151 will make a difference for eternity. This is Kingdom Business with a capital K, and we ask you to join the Truth Team. Come on, you guys, $1 a day is a great entry level, $360 for the year, 800-347-5151.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
To all listeners out there, I've been listening for over 2 years. I just recently became a supporter. So I am a proud supporter of Point of View, and so I would just encourage everyone who listens to this radio station and to your specific broadcast, because it has been so influential for me, and I refer people to it because you put out such great information, and it's so thought-invoking and conversation-stimulating. It's great. So thank you so much, and I'll continue to support you guys.
But I've decided I'm going to give Point of View something this year because I think financially we're doing better. Point of View is one of, in my opinion, 2 or 3 places where you can really get this kind of information, and it is sorely lacking in our culture. And so Point of View, and there's a couple other programs, if we don't support them, I'm not convinced those messages will get out.
Thank you very much, and I just love your program. It's been an inspiration to me for many years. I just want to encourage all those of you to help keep Point of View on the air. We cannot afford to allow these stations to go empty. Please support Point of View.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Back once again, and again, we encourage you to give us a call, 800-347-5151. I'm looking right now, and although we did get some calls, now we need to hear from you.
We do, and I'd love to hear. Would there be one of you to give at the Century Club membership level? That's $1,000, and you know what? There are people who, that's $100 a month, actually, and that's $1,200 for the year, and we invite you to join that level who can do that. Not everybody can do that, but I'll bet you there's one person right now who can pick up the phone at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, and says, you know what? I can do $100 a month. Let's make that happen.
Well, again, one of the things I wanted to share with you real quickly is that if you start looking at the number of evangelical Christians that are going to the polls, that's starting to increase. And let me just give you 2 numbers. We'll look at the midterms because that's the best kind of apples-to-apples comparison, because when Mitt Romney runs and Donald Trump, that's so different. But in 2014, during the midterms, 21.6 million or 21 million evangelical Christians voted. But in 2018, we just came back from that, 30 million, 30.8 million. That's an increase of 9%. And, of course, there are all sorts of individuals, some of whom who have been on this program, who are doing more to try to get even more of those individuals sitting on the sidelines. And to use a football analogy, sometimes what we have are a number of individuals that are out on the field playing, but there are some others that don't even have the jersey on, or they're back in the locker room. And so we need to get more people with the jersey on out of the locker room and out on the field. And so we are seeing an increase. And I think part of that, Brad, is the fact that a lot of people recognize that if we don't do something right now, we're going to lose this country.
That's right. And again, you can have a part in this, have a part in the victory by giving us a call at 800-347-5151. Lines are wide open right now for you to call. And you can also give online anytime at pointofview.net.
Well, let me just mention real quickly that in the next hour, we're going to have Chuck Bentley, and he's with Crown Financial, but we'll also be talking about his piece that we've posted, Is Socialism Biblical? But Warren Kelly, we need the phones to ring, don't we?
As the guy who handles paying the bills, let me tell you, we need the phones to ring. We need to hear from you. So please pick up that phone, 1-800-347-5151, pointofview.net.
1-800-347-5151. Let's hear from you right now.
Fill them up.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can. It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show. On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you've been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation today, and if you would like to join with us, and I hope that you would, there is a great opportunity for your participation. And as we've talked about last hour, we have such a need to really do what we can to educate the next generation, even, of course, the older generation, but especially the younger generation that says, you know, socialism's not so bad. I wouldn't mind even living in a socialist country, which is one of the reasons the theme this week is Socialism, a Clear and Present Danger. Last hour, if you were with us, you might have heard us talk with Robert Knight about his 2 articles, Why Democratic Socialism Won't Work, The False Promises of Socialism. Just a few minutes, we're going to be talking to our good friend Chuck Bentley, and one of the articles we've posted is Socialism Biblical, and we'll get into a variety of other topics that he likes to address as well. Just a good friend of the ministry, but to continue our conversation, of course, we have Brad Fisk in studio with us today, and we've had an opportunity to hear from a few of our listeners, but we still need to hear from many more.
We do. And a reminder that there's a match challenge on the table. Every dollar you give right now is doubled dollar for dollar. Please don't forget that, because this is going to expire soon, and we do not want that to happen until you've had a chance to participate. Like Rick, who gave $30 monthly, and he joined the Truth Team. Now that becomes $60. We get to count the entire year, Kerby, when we do this matches.
Right.
So that $30 gift has become $60.
Yes.
Okay, Gene, thank you for your $100 single gift. That becomes $200. You see how this works? It's not hard. This is easy math.
It's very easy math.
Okay, thank you, Dale, checking in from South Carolina. That $50 single gift doubles up. And I'll just grab a couple more here out of our stack. Another $30 a month becomes $60. Another $50 becomes $100. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But you know what? The job is not even close to being done, because we are in this for the long haul, Kerby. This is an incredible cultural war that is reaching new heights that we have never, ever seen before, at least in our lifetimes. 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Don't delay. Please join the Truth Team.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I just want to commend you guys on your program. I love listening to you.
I want to say, first of all, that I really enjoyed the Millennial Roundtable, and I love the program altogether. I think Kerby is great, and I really appreciate all of y'all, all that y'all do, and the truth that y'all put out.
I think you guys and gals are more right on about the assessment of this country right now than anything I've heard. You know, I go home and I tell my wife, you've got to hear what they're talking about on the show.
Point of View is actually a lifeline for me, and I'm actually a third-generation Point of View listener. I homeschool my girls, and I don't think I could do what I do without Point of View on a daily basis. Without ministries like Point of View, we really don't have much hope for the future of our children, our grandchildren. They just really help on a daily basis protect the freedoms that we enjoy today. I can't see a better way to invest in our future than to support Point of View.
Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it. Not only that, I want to encourage everybody listening to donate, because without our donations, I know that y'all won't be able to stay on the air, and it's just, I don't know where we get this kind of information if it wasn't from y'all.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Back once again, if you are thinking that this would be something that you would want to be involved with, and I'm sure by now you probably are, I want to make it very easy for you to participate. One is you can go to the website, pointofview.net. Maybe you say, look, I only got about a minute. You can do that in just about a minute or two. But really, if you give us a little bit more time, and maybe 2 minutes, then we can encourage you to give us a call, 800-347-5151. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, we're going to have Chuck Bentley with us, and I don't want any of you to say, well, I'll just postpone it till later because I want to hear what he has to say. No, now is the time to call, and we're going to be talking with him about kind of a biblical view of economics, a biblical view of socialism, of capitalism, and all sorts of issues that you need to know about. And, of course, he's been a great friend of this ministry and really wanted to try to connect up with me at the National Religious Broadcasters. I know, Brad, you were there. Didn't have a chance to see him, so I'm looking forward to hearing what indeed he is going to bring to the table. But he will tell you the same thing we're telling you right now. You need to support this ministry, and he will be telling you that he and his wife have been supporting it for years. You've just heard somebody talking about a third-generation point of view listener.
That's right.
You also heard somebody else talk about the Millennial Roundtable. Guess what? Nick Pitts is going to be in here tomorrow.
Yes.
And we will actually have kind of a limited millennial roundtable with him. And so that's another reason to support this ministry. The Friday weekend edition, the millennial roundtable. But, of course, just individuals we've talked with today. Robert Knight, earlier we talked with Keisha Russell. We're just a few minutes, we're going to talk with Chuck Bentley. Of course, yesterday we, at this hour, had Colonel Alan West on. Just a great lineup of individuals. And if you appreciate, and I know you do, the kind of news information commentary we provide, then that's why we need to hear from you right now. 1-800-351-1212. We've had people who've listened to this program run for school board, they've run for city council, run for legislature, run for Congress. Hey, we had some ran for the presidency. I was with Mike Huckabee the other day, and he said, yeah, I used to listen to this program when I was actually a seminary student. Of course, we've talked about Michelle Bachmann used to listen to this when she was 19 years of age. We've had people start pregnancy centers, schools. A lot of times people say, well, what's the impact? We can show you the impact.
Yes, we can.
But the biggest impact is, Brad, the future.
That's right, the future. I'm thinking about kids. I'm thinking about grandkids right now. I'm thinking about the future generation. What kind of world are we going to leave them as we retire, as we die off in our generation? What are we leaving behind? What legacy are we leaving behind? Are we investing in eternal kingdom business stuff or stuff that doesn't matter when it's all burned up? And let me encourage you to do something, a really unique idea. Talking to those of you who have already joined the Truth Team, either now or in the recent past, would you consider upgrading your gift to $100 a month?
Very good.
And join the Century Club? Why not become a member at $100 a month? Just up that a bit from $30 a month to $100, and you too can be a part of that. And you'll release 2 Bible sticks to 2 servicemen that are deployed overseas right now. This is the same Bible stick we give away to anybody who donates at the $30 a month level. But the Bible stick there's a military version of that, and your gift will release 2 of those at that $100 a month level to 2 servicemen and women, and the family also gets a copy of the Bible. Is that awesome?
I think so. And again, let me just hold that up for those of you watching online. That's what it looks like. It's military grade.
That's right.
And so here is an opportunity for you to pass this on to 2 individuals serving overseas.
That's right.
They'll receive it through their chaplains. So not only will you get a benefit of having a Bible stick, but you'll be able to pass that on to others.
It's preloaded with the New Testament, word for word, music, drama, sound effects. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can always give online as well at any time of the day or night. Pointofview.net.
I just mentioned when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit from Joseph Farah for just a second, and then we'll be talking with Chuck Bentley. That's why you want to call right now, because you don't want to miss what's going to be said in just a few minutes. So please, as we go to a break now, give us a call. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or of course the website is pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Thomas Edsall, writing in the New York Times, cites a number of academic studies that demonstrate what most of us have already seen.
Partisan hate is on the increase. One academic paper with the title Lethal Mass Partisanship found that just over 42% of the people in each political party views the opposition as downright evil. He then concludes that 48 million voters who cast ballots in the 2016 election believe that members of the opposition party are in league with the devil. He also cites another arresting statistic. What if the opposing party wins the 2020 election? How much do you feel violence would be justified then? The study found that 18% of Democrats and 13% of Republicans said violence would be justified on a scale ranging from a little to a lot. Later in his commentary, he cites another academic study that concludes that on both sides of the political aisle, the best informed voters are by far the most partisan. We would expect that well-educated, well-informed people might be able to pull the electorate out of this morass. David French, writing in National Review, repeats this idea. He says in a time of crisis, American citizens often look for guidance and take their cues from the subset of American citizens who are most engaged and informed. Yet study after study is now showing that this cohort of Americans is driving the engine of American division. If we're to turn this around, we need pastors and Christian leaders working in the political arena to set an example. Political thought leaders are the ones driving much of the division and partisan hate in America. Christian leaders should not give into this division and conflict, but provide examples of grace and civility. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360. Joseph Farah.
Well, I think Point of View is one of the first radio programs to really give us alternative news, if you will, to ferret out those stories that the so-called mainstream media would never bring to people. That is what has always made your program fascinating. It's what has always delivered the audience to you. For people who are really hungry for the real story, for real information, there is no parallel to Point of View.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Joseph Farah, again, giving us some compliments as an individual at World Net Daily. And, of course, in studio with me, Brad Fisk. But one of the things we wanted to do, especially since this week we're talking about socialism, clear and present danger, is to really address that issue. Of course, my booklet here, Capitalism and Socialism, is one way to do that. Of course, I showed you my Christians and Economics book, and now we have it in Spanish, too. So I got
That's
English
awesome.
and
That's
Spanish.
really important.
But I don't claim to know half as much about economics as our next guest, Chuck Bentley, who's a good friend, and, of course, one of the individuals at Crown Financial, following in the legacy of Larry Burkett and Howard Dayton, of course, producing the daily national radio broadcast, My Money Life. And, Chuck, it is always a delight to have you on the program with us.
Well, it's good to be with you, Kerby, and I certainly appreciate the topic that you've taken on today. It's a really, really hot topic and one that I think we need to look at through a biblical lens.
And again, one of the articles we've posted by you is Socialism Biblical? And of course, there are so many others that they can find at Crown Financial. But before we get into the specifics about the biblical part, Aren't you just a little bit overwhelmed as we are? If you click on our banner here to join the team, we have Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, a wealth tax, guaranteed income for all, free college tuition, 70% tax rate on higher incomes. And those are just the first 6 out of about 15 items that I'm seeing. And this is just kind of sticker shock, isn't it? I mean, we can't afford this, can we?
Well, I've read various estimates of what it's actually supposed to cost, and some estimates go as high as like $80 trillion, retrofitting every building in America, stopping all air flight. I mean, some of it is complete fantasy. It's ridiculous. And in some, Kirby, I take a little bit of comfort in that, don't you? That it's so outrageous, surely nobody's going to believe it.
Well, you would wish. But, and again, to be fair, there was a vote the other day, an up or down vote on the Green New Deal in the Senate, and it went nowhere. You had a lot of Democrats voting present. But we've talked about the fact that the younger generation really tends to think that maybe socialism is better than capitalism. One of the reasons we did the booklet, we're going to have a millennial roundtable tomorrow with Dr. Nick Pitts, who's a millennial, and some of the other millennials. But there's another aspect of that, and I address a little bit of it in my little booklet, because there are some that maybe naively think, when I look at the book of Acts, there was sort of this economic koinonia. There was a gathering together, sharing goods. So they wonder whether or not maybe the Bible actually teaches socialism. What have you found in your research?
Well, absolutely not. The Bible doesn't support socialism at any level. In fact, the Bible makes it very clear that socialism is not the way that we should operate our finances. It's a poor economic model. Now, I want to go back to what I said earlier. There's a connotation with the word socialism today that's radically changed in the last 50 years from an unfavorable connotation to a favorable one, particularly among young people. And the word associated with socialism is equality. They believe that it's a model that provides for equal standing for everybody. That means equal rights, equal distribution. It's fair, it's compassionate. It sounds really good on the surface to them. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's starting to rise in popularity. And so I can understand that. I can understand why people want fairness and why they want a compassionate system. But nowhere in the Bible, Kirby, does the Word of God support that it's an economic philosophy that should be embraced by a government. We have a personal responsibility to work. We have a personal obligation and a right and a privilege to give and to take care of those who cannot work. And that's from the beginning of Scripture throughout. The Ten Commandments point out that we have private property. Otherwise, there would be no law against stealing. It also says we're not to covet what other people own. We're not even to desire it in our own heart. And to me, socialism really becomes the legalization of coveting by the government. It's trying to legalize what God said is devastating.
One other thing I wanted to pick up, and I know you've written about, is universal basic income biblical. And that's one of those ones I mentioned as well, this idea of a guaranteed income for all. The laborer is worthy of his hire, and those who will not work will not eat. But how do we apply some of those biblical principles to another idea that's actually been put on the socialist agenda?
Well, I think you have to look deeper than what's proposed on the surface with UBI, Universal Basic Income. Almost every single person who advocates it, a presidential candidate now coming out advocating that that's his central part of his platform, $1,000 a month guaranteed for people between 18 and 64 years old. Now, his worldview is dystopian. He believes that technology is going to cause everybody to lose their job, and all these peasants are going to be climbing over the moat and tearing down the wonderful technological advances that we're making in Silicon Valley. And so to keep them happy, he wants all of us to be taxed so that we can distribute $1,000 to every person that's of working age. And I don't even buy the worldview. I don't buy the dystopian worldview. The premise is off, and therefore the solution is off. Obviously, the Bible advocates work because work not only provides for our needs, but it also shapes our lives. I think, it's true. The man builds the house, but the house also builds the man.
Yes.
And there's an assumption that if a person has $1,000 a month, their problems are going to go away. There'll be no more sin in their life. They'll just do good things with that money. And it's really a fantasy. UBI and socialism seem to go hand in hand in terms of the idea that it's very compassionate, it's very equalizing, it's a real good thing on the surface, but it just never works. I remember asking a friend of mine from China what he thought about UBI, and he said, we've tried that over here, and we all starved to death.
Yes, that's a good line. Let's take a break, but just before we do so, let me just mention we have a link to crown.org. Some great resources there. As a matter of fact, you'll see my endorsement of an organization I think so highly of and have learned so much from. But one of the things, Brad, we need to mention is we are in the second day of our Truth Team. And it does seem to me that we need to have those people that are sitting by the phones right now waiting for the phones to ring to get a call from some of the listeners.
That's right. This is Truth Team Week, and it's an opportunity for you at that opening level, that $1 a day level. You join the Truth Team, you get a Bible stick from Faith Comes by Hearing. That's a preloaded little MP3 player. It's the actual player, and you just plug it in and listen to the Word of God, word for word, ESV version, dramatized music, sound effects, a wonderful thank you gift. It's the most popular thing we've ever done, actually, in the history of the ministry in that regard. And so we're excited to put one of those in your hand for your gift of $1 a day or more. And then we have a $50 giving level and the Century Club $100 a month giving level. And there's booklets involved as an additional thank you gift. And then at the Century Club, we are actually going to give 2 military versions of that Bible stick to 2 men or women who are deployed right now overseas. They're going to receive that gift that you release 2 of them with your gift. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We want to say thanks to Wendy for your single gift of $400. Thank you for that. It becomes $800, by the way, because there's a match challenge right now. And here's a $50 gift that becomes a $100 gift. Thank you so much for that. Tyler, Texas, checking in with $100 becomes $200. And then here's a friend of the ministry who gave a $1,000 single gift.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Again, you know what? It's not out of reach for a lot of people to do that. Here's a friend who gave a $50 single gift on top of their regular giving. Already a donor, they're supersizing their gift. And I would love to suggest those of you who are part of the $1 a day club, why don't you upgrade it to a Century Club level? 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151.
Just think of one of the benefits you get by upgrading to that Century level. You receive some of these booklets, and one of those is on constitutional interpretation, campus unrest, capitalism, socialism. So again, whatever you can do, we need to hear from you right now. We're going to a break, so please give us a call, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. So many lines open. That's why we need to hear from you. 800-347-5151. We'll be back with Chuck Bentley right after this.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can. It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show. On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, we certainly do need to hear from you. 1-800-347-5151. Talking with Chuck Bentley. And again, of course, he is with Crown Financial. Brad Fisk in studio here. We got a couple of other responses, so we'll probably go through those fairly quickly. But just wanted to mention again that we are appreciating your phone calls, but we still need to hear from many of you.
Just a couple of quick thank yous among many that are here. Thanks to a gift of $60. Thank you from Illinois. And that becomes $120. $20 because every dollar given right now is doubled with our match challenge. So thank you for giving us a call, 800-347-5151.
Chuck, in just a minute, I want to talk about debt because our latest Outlook magazine coming out is on the subject of debt, and I know you've written about that. But what would you, first of all, say to our listeners who might wonder, is it worth actually investing some financial resources in Point of View?
Well, first of all, I would give it my personal estimate. My wife and I support Point of View for a variety of reasons. Number one, Kerby, we believe in you. We believe God called you and equipped you for such a time as this, that you have all the education, the background, and the skill sets necessary to combat the lies that the enemy puts forth into the culture with the truth. And so we have a great deal of respect for your ability. We also believe that the ministry is effective. It's multifaceted, not only going out over the airways every day, but also teaching, training, and discipling the next generation, the multiplication of leaders that you've been so good at. And so we're personally a member of the Truth Team. And we encourage others to join as well, because the issue is an urgent issue. There really is a clear and present danger. That's not a fabricated slogan. The enemy is always seeking to lie and deceive. And I grew up in the generation it was not even imaginable that this idea of socialism would catch hold, that it would even have a foothold. But it's been taught for the past several decades in our systems. We have people coming out of school today believing that it's the direction that we should go. And I think it's time now to stem that tide, and you're a great way to hit that battle head on. And so we do encourage people to become members of the Truth Team, specifically of the Truth Team. There's a lot of places to give, but I believe you're on the leading edge of fighting this battle. And I just want to mention one more thing, Kerby and Brad, about the Bible stick. I'm really good with the people at Faith Comes by Hearing. I use the Bible stick. It's a dramatized version of the Scripture, and I understand why it's such a popular item to say thank you to your supporters. So that's just a second reason for people to join today, to not only get in this battle, to put the resources into the areas that are going to make a difference, like Point of View and the entire ministry that you have confronting the issues, but also to put the Word of God in your own hands and into the hands of others.
So again, just great opportunity for you to participate. 1-800-347-5151. And one of the things, Chuck, I wanted to take a call real quickly from one of our callers that is in Illinois, WPEO. Claudette, I think you wanted to warn us about some of the dangers of socialism.
Yes, sir. My mother just turned 95 on the 31st of March, and she lived through Hitler's reign from 1939 to 1945, and she knows very well what socialism and communism and fascism is, and it's a slippery slope, very slippery slope, and you have said it very well. It is a very clear and a very present danger, and I would hate to see America fall for the things that Castro has done, the things that Maduro has done in Venezuela, the things that have happened since World War II. We must not forget.
Wow. Well, and again, I just think your point's well taken. Chuck, that's a good illustration of the fact that we have a whole generation that's grown up right now that when they think socialism, they think Denmark or Sweden, although I've written commentaries saying that Sweden really isn't a socialist country. If you want to understand what socialism is, go to Venezuela, as she just mentioned a minute ago, right?
Well, that's correct. Claudette is spot on. In fact, we have a member of our staff. They were born and raised in Venezuela. They were there during the days when it was being touted as a beautiful example and model of equality and how wonderful it could be. They, of course, were thriving with the prices of oil being very high, and now we look at what's happened as the price of oil has fallen and their economy has collapsed. Literally, people over there are starving. It's a terribly pathetic situation. We're communicating with people at the borders, trying to get into them, and even the leaders inside the country are resisting assistance to for the people. We have a ministry inside Cuba. Cuba is so painfully broken that it just breaks your heart to see what the people are having to live through. They have a black box grocery system there where literally they have to buy groceries on the black market because they can't afford to even step foot into a grocery store and buy it properly. The average wage in Cuba is now $20 a month. That's the kind of equality that people don't think about when they say, oh, socialism is going to be a good system for us. They haven't dug beneath the surface. They haven't looked at the real examples. But you're helping people to see that. And I do want to say to your listeners that I personally endorse the call to action, that this is a clear and present danger. You're doing the work for such a time as this. And when you or Brad ask people to respond, today's the day to respond. Today's the day to join the Truth Team.
Well, let's again encourage you to make a phone call right now, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Of course, you can just continue listening and go to pointofview.net and do that as well. Another question I want to put on the table is we have just recently put together a very significant study of both government debt and consumer debt. And I know, Chuck, you have written about that as well. And this is another source of concern. It is just sort of amazing to me that people are talking about spending trillions of dollars on, quote, Medicare for all, trillions of dollars on Green New Deal, when it's not that the federal government is broke. It's $21 trillion past broke, aren't they?
Well, absolutely, and getting worse every day. Neither side of the aisle has been able to stem the tide in overspending. It's as if debt doesn't matter is actually the philosophy that we're operated by. We know that it matters. We've had the benefit for years and years to be able to print money and to sort of control the monetary system of the world, but it's now getting out of control, and there's going to be a painful day of reckoning. I actually believe, although I would never endorse him as a candidate, but the founder of Starbucks said the real issue that American people need to be aware of in this next election is who's going to fix the deficits, who's going to actually do something about it. And certainly a trend towards socialism will only make the debt worse. It's a higher tax base to pay for the ideas proposed in the Green New Deal, a much, much higher tax. And essentially, I think it could push the economy over the edge. So we need to be aware of it, not only as a bad economic philosophy going forward, but even a very serious threat to the fragile economy that we have built upon debt already. It wouldn't take but a few more years of excessive spending, and we won't be able to continue to manage this debt. We're only getting away with it because people still trust us and the good faith and credit of the United States government. But those days could be quickly eroded if we're not careful.
I would certainly agree. Let's take a break, and we'll keep Chuck over for just a little bit longer. And Brad is in studio with us. But again, we certainly, as we go to the break, have some open lines once again. So this is an opportunity for you to call right now. We really need to hear from you. We have certainly put on the table the financial need. We've put on the table the need for the country. And we've also mentioned that there's a match. So what else can we do other than ask you to give us a call at 800-347-5151?
You've heard of the TV program The Voice. Well, we are the voice for Christian worldview truth, biblical truth. I can't say that enough. We are listener supported. We absolutely depend on you for the gifts that come and make the ministry go. And your gift right now will make a huge difference at 800-347-5151. Make a difference, won't you, for eternity? It's an investment in the kingdom. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151. Remember, every dollar's doubled.
It's really easy to join the Truth Team. Just go to the website, pointofview.net. Or, as we've said, give you a call and give us a call, 800-347-5151. Looking for 5 phone calls right now at 800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
The things that catch my attention are the abortion issue, and it's so important for people to understand the value of life. And to me, that is number one in our lives. And the shows that I've heard on that have impacted. It just gives me kind of a different venue to be able to explain things differently to people. And I have kept in touch with the ministry, and I do donate each month because I feel like it's an important way for people to understand the worldview and that Christ taught. And we have just tried very hard to instill that in our children. Thank you so much for your service, guys, because you do have one.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Back once again, 1-800-347-5151. And let me just for another minute or two see if we can spend a little more time with Chuck. And Chuck, I was just thinking the question that's probably in most people's minds are, what can I do to turn this around? And more importantly, maybe to create a sense of motivation. What happens if we don't get involved? It seems to me that those are really important questions that I know you've been thinking about there at Crown Financial.
Well, I do, not only because I live here, but also because I travel so often. And we have a global outreach today, Kerby, and I'm in many countries that are under the oppression of socialism or communism, and we're teaching the people inside those countries. We're seeing the impact on their lives, the suffering they go through. And I think those scenarios seem unimaginable to Americans. They can't enter into something dramatic happening here. But the reality of it is that it can happen. And it happens, I think, when we lose our salt and our light. When the Lord said that we're to be salt and light, we're to preserve what he gave us. We're to remember his precepts. We're to remember his ways. And those are the things that you're accomplishing. You're helping people to remember. You're helping us to preserve what God said is good and holy and to live by his principles. And we're to bring light into the marketplace. It is a dark marketplace out there. There's dark ideas. I read recently where there's some advocates today saying that overpopulation is so bad that all Americans should stop having children, that we're being immoral having children, totally contradictory to God's word. And so when Point of View brings light into the marketplace, it's so very important. It's not something we should take for granted. Even the freedom and the privilege we have to use the airways, to advance God's voice, to advance God's call into the general market. We still have that freedom. Many places I travel, they don't have that freedom. But that freedom is brought about by just taking the responsibility to support it. And the joy we have to do something about this, to say, I have joined the fight. I am a part of the battle, and I want to support those who are on the front lines. Then we help you bring that salt into the marketplace, into the hearts of God's people, and the light into the places where light needs to penetrate in this country immediately now. And there is an urgency, I believe a very clear urgency, for your supporters to step up and to say, I want to be part of the monthly plan. I want to give as much as I can right now. I want to be invested in this cause.
Excellent. Chuck Bentley with us. And again, we have a link to crown.org. And Chuck, thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for being part of the Truth Team. And thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Well, keep up the good work, Brad. Keep up the good work, Kerby, and the whole team. We're proud of you. We're proud to be partners with you. And it truly is an honor for me to join the program and to say it's from one ministry leader to another. We are with you. We want to stand united, and to say that if our job is just to hold up your arms, then we want to hold up your arms, and so that you can keep winning these battles. And God bless you both.
Thank you so much. Just about out of time, and I don't know if we've met the match, and so there is an urgency there.
Oh, yes,
there's an urgency for the country, but there's also an urgency for your financial involvement today, right?
That's right. We've not met the match.
Okay.
So every call coming in, every dollar given is doubled. And the phone number to call is 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. 5151. You won't get a busy signal. You don't have to have the funds in hand right now that you pledge. This is for the coming year, and we ask you to consider that $1 a day gift, and we're going to give you a free gift of the Bible stick, just like Chuck was talking about, and it's the New Testament fully loaded on this little MP3 player that'll fit in your shirt pocket, and it's an incredible thank you gift we want to pass on to you. Won't you call us? 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Oh, I thank God for what you're doing on Point of View. You guys have more influence across this country than I believe any of them in terms of tackling the issues and getting the truth out to Americans. It's getting to the point where truth just is bottled up on every hand. Every time you turn around, there's another big bottleneck against truth. I hope your listeners realize what Point of View is doing and supports Point of View in every possible way you can.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
I always wanted to give because I thought that Point of View really
brings a lot of things in out here in the open that you don't hear anywhere else. And I knew when I was hearing on there, well, I could count on it being something that you could about check into it, and the proof would be there. You know, I didn't have to wonder, well, where did they make that stuff up from? I just know that it's going to be facts. That's what I call true journalism and putting the stuff out. I really think that's great.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Back for just a few more minutes. Again, 1-800-347-5151.
You know, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it right now. I really think there is somebody out there with a $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 gift.
Yes.
And won't you give us a call? Listen, there is no limit in God's economy. It does not exist. And God's generosity plan really has no upper limit that I'm aware of. And so we're asking you to prayerfully consider, if you have the means, the Lord has blessed you, won't you consider a large gift like a $5,000, $10,000 gift that would get us so far ahead of where we need to be right now. 800-347-5151. Won't you have courage to be generous? 800-347-5151. We are listener supported. We cannot do this without you. We are so dependent on you, as we have been for the last 47 years. Please don't stop now.
And again, you just think of all the issues we've covered in the last couple of hours.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
Again, the breadth and the depth. And so that's what you're supporting. And some of you might say, well, okay, I appreciate the fact that maybe there's somebody that can give $5,000, but I don't know what I can do. I bet you can do $1 a day.
Yes.
$1, just $1 per day, which is $30 a month, $360 a year. And I have met so many of you that have said, you know, at first it seemed difficult. $1 a day, well, that doesn't seem too bad, but $30 a month, well, that's a little tougher. I couldn't write you a check for $360 a year,
right?
But I could write you one for $30 a month or have it taken out of my credit card.
Right.
And that's what I'm looking for some of you. So as we go to the end of the program, we still have a couple of open lines. And even though we're going off the air, you can still join with us.
Yes.
How do you do that? First of all, you can go to the website, pointofview.net. That's kind of open 24/7.
That's right.
And for the next few minutes, we'll still be taking phone calls. So that number is 800-347-5151. And we need
There's four lines open.
lines to be full up.
Yep.
And, of course, our Millennial Roundtable tomorrow. Nick Pitts is going to have a few things to say, so we'll be here as well. One last time, 1-800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. See you tomorrow.
Last week, the Senate held a vote on the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, that young darling of leftists and dancing communists everywhere, believes a special class of people in Washington, D.C. can run our lives and everything else better than we can. It's a clear and present danger to our prosperity and our very survival. Such ideas have failed everywhere they've been tried throughout history. But there's always someone who thinks the problem is not the bad ideas, but the fact that they weren't running the show. On top of that, whenever these ideas grow, there's no room for God or God's people. America's ignorance of socialism needs to be confronted. That's why America needs you on the Truth Team. When you join now, you protect our nation's future, and you get double the impact thanks to a generous matching gift. Joining is fast and easy online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.